There comes a moment in every life when the shadows you carry at home become too heavy to ignore. They are subtle, almost invisible, quiet whispers of expectation, silent judgments, unspoken demands, but their weight presses down on your chest until even breathing feels like defiance. And yet society, tradition, love itself often tells you to endure, to forgive endlessly, to sacrifice your own peace for the comfort of others. But what if the very chains you cling to were never meant to define you? What if the demons you feel lurking in your family, the patterns of control, the quiet resentment, the inherited burdens, were not a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of unresolved pain passed down without choice? Tonight, we confront the truth. Escaping these shadows is not betrayal, and letting yourself breathe freely is not sin. This is the journey of reclaiming your life without guilt, the delicate art of honoring your own soul while witnessing the past without letting it imprison you. And as you listen, I invite you to feel each word not as judgment, but as permission. Permission to awaken, to release, and to step into a life that belongs solely to you. Recognizing the hidden chains. You cannot fight what you do not see. And yet, so many of us live our lives in quiet servitude to invisible chains, bound not by iron or wood, but by the habits, expectations, and subtle manipulations that have been woven into our family lives from the day we were born. These chains are not always obvious. They come disguised as love, as care, as duty. A voice that tells you to stay, to obey, to suppress your anger or your longing for freedom. A look that communicates disappointment, not words, but a pressure so palpable it leaves scars deeper than any visible wound. Recognizing these chains is the first and perhaps the hardest step. It requires honesty, a willingness to look beneath the surface of every interaction and every tradition, and to see that some of the weight you have been carrying is not yours to bear. It is not a reflection of your failures or your shortcomings. It is a reflection of patterns that have been repeated over generations, patterns you were born into, nurtured by, and conditioned to accept as inevitable. And for years you may have believed that enduring this weight quietly was the only way to love, the only way to survive. But survival is not living, and enduring is not the same as thriving. The hidden chains are cunning. They do not announce themselves with grand gestures or loud confrontations. They appear as small, persistent voices in your head. You are not enough. You owe them. This is just the way it is. Perhaps they manifest in subtle favoritism between siblings, in the silent comparison to cousins, in the quiet disapproval that follows any choice that does not align with unspoken family rules. And over time, these invisible pressures accumulate, leaving you trapped in a constant state of tension, as if the very act of breathing freely might shatter the fragile equilibrium that has been so carefully constructed around you. You might feel guilt for wanting more, for aspiring to a life beyond the narrow confines of expectation. You might feel shame for feeling angry, for feeling hurt, for simply feeling anything that threatens the illusion that family is always safe, always nurturing, always unconditional. But here is the truth. Recognizing these chains does not make you ungrateful. It does not make you unloving. It does not make you disloyal. It makes you human, and it makes you brave. Because to see clearly is to take the first step toward liberation. Liberation begins with observation, with the quiet, unflinching act of noticing. You must learn to identify the patterns that repeat themselves, those moments when your voice is silenced, when your choices are undermined, when your presence is minimized. Notice the rituals of control disguised as guidance. Observe the subtle manipulations cloaked in concern. Pay attention to the weight of expectation pressing on your shoulders and how it bends your spirit over time. Do not judge yourself for feeling trapped. Do not convince yourself that you are weak for yearning to break free. These feelings are not weakness, they are awareness. And awareness is the precursor to action. Without it, the chains remain hidden, the burden remains invisible, and the soul remains imprisoned in silence. But recognition alone is not enough. Awareness must be paired with acceptance, not of the chains themselves, but of your right to release yourself from them. Accept that these pressures, these inherited patterns, are not a reflection of your worth, your capacity, or your love. Accept that you are allowed to desire more, to demand peace, to cultivate happiness on your own terms. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not surrender. It is the deliberate acknowledgement that while you cannot change the past, you can reclaim your present and shape your future. Once you see the chains for what they are, the next step is to loosen your grip on the weight you were never meant to carry. And this loosening begins internally, in the quiet moments when you tell yourself the truth. I am not responsible for their pain. I am not responsible for their approval. I am responsible only for my own life, my own peace, and my own choices. As you recognize these hidden chains, something remarkable begins to happen. You begin to distinguish between love and control, guidance and obligation, duty and self-erasure. You start to see that many of the burdens you have carried were never yours to shoulder in the first place. And the more you see, the more you begin to feel a quiet, almost forbidden relief. A sense that perhaps, just perhaps, it is not only acceptable but necessary to step back, to breathe, and to reclaim your own space in the world. This recognition does not erase guilt automatically, nor does it dissolve decades of ingrained habits overnight, but it plants a seed of clarity, a seed of empowerment, a seed that will grow into courage, and from this courage, liberation will emerge. So tonight, I ask you to look closely at the subtle patterns that shape your life, to observe the invisible pressures, and to acknowledge them without judgment. Know that seeing is not blaming, and knowing is not betrayal. The chains may be hidden, but they are not indestructible. Recognition is the first step, the quiet but revolutionary act of reclaiming your mind, your heart, and your life. It is the moment when you pause and say, I see you, I understand you, but I will no longer let you define me. And in that moment, the journey toward freedom begins, not with confrontation, not with anger, but with the serene, unwavering act of seeing clearly, standing tall, and taking your first step into the life that has always been yours to live, owning your right to freedom. Freedom is not something anyone can grant you. It is not a gift to be earned, nor a privilege reserved for those who conform to expectation. It is your birthright, your essential inheritance from the moment you drew your first breath. And yet, so many of us grow up believing that freedom must be negotiated, that it must be quietly borrowed and cautiously repaid. We are taught to ask permission to feel, to think, to live fully. We are taught that wanting more, that craving peace, that demanding respect somehow makes us selfish. But let me tell you this, the very act of claiming your life, of breathing deeply in the spaces where you are allowed to be yourself, is not selfish, it is necessary. Without it, your spirit withers beneath the weight of unspoken expectations, and the life you were meant to live slips quietly through your fingers, leaving only echoes of what might have been. To claim freedom is to remember that your existence is not defined by the comfort or discomfort of others, but by the truth of who you are. And yet, claiming this freedom is rarely simple. The bonds that tether us to guilt and obligation are subtle, cunning, and persistent. You may hear the quiet voice of family urging you to stay, to sacrifice, to endure, and you may even feel its pressure in your own conscience. Guilt can be a masterful illusionist, convincing you that breaking away is betrayal, that stepping into your own light casts shadows on those you love. But recognize this. Guilt is not an indicator of wrongdoing. Guilt is a signal, a whisper that you are challenging old patterns, that you are daring to prioritize yourself, and that you are awakening to the truth that life is yours to inhabit, fully and unapologetically. The moment you understand this, you begin to disentangle the cords of obligation that have wrapped themselves around your heart for years. You begin to understand that freedom is not about rebellion, it is about clarity, about choice, about embracing the authority you have over your own life. Owning your right to freedom requires courage, quiet, patient, and relentless courage. It is not a loud declaration, it is not a confrontation. It is a series of small, deliberate acts, each one asserting with quiet dignity that your well-being matters. It is in saying no without fear, in setting boundaries without shame, in choosing solitude when your soul needs it, in pursuing passions even when others do not understand. Every time you make such a choice, every time you prioritize your peace, you reinforce the truth that freedom is not negotiable. It is not conditional on the approval of others. It is the foundation upon which your life can be rebuilt, brick by deliberate brick. And the beauty of this process is that you do not need to justify yourself, defend yourself, or explain yourself to anyone. The act of claiming your freedom is justification enough. Your life, your peace, your dreams, they are sufficient reason. Freedom also demands that you confront fear. Fear of rejection, fear of angering those you love, fear of losing connection, fear of being misunderstood. These fears are natural, but they are not insurmountable. They are reminders that you are stepping into uncharted territory, that you are claiming what was always yours but never fully acknowledged. And as you face these fears, something extraordinary happens. You realize that the world does not end when you choose yourself. Relationships may shift, expectations may falter, and yet, in that vacuum, a new life emerges. A life where choices are made consciously, where peace is a practice, and where your spirit is no longer hostage to the silent manipulations of obligation. This is the gift of freedom. It does not sever connections, it transforms them. It does not diminish love, it clarifies it. Finally, owning your right to freedom is a profound act of self-respect. It is the moment when you tell yourself with absolute clarity that your existence has value beyond the needs, wishes, and judgments of others. It is the moment when you recognize that you deserve to be heard, seen, and honored, not in competition with anyone else, but as a declaration of your inherent worth. And with this recognition comes liberation. The chains that once seemed unbreakable begin to loosen, the weight of expectation begins to lift, and the space to breathe, to grow, to dream, and to live fully expands before you. Freedom, once claimed, becomes a compass. It guides your choices, it illuminates your path, and it reminds you every single day that you are the author of your own life, the keeper of your own peace, and the guardian of your own soul. So let go of the notion that your life belongs to anyone but yourself. Release the illusion that obedience and sacrifice are the only paths to love or acceptance. Step into the space that is yours. Breathe in the power that has always resided within you, and know that every act of claiming your right to freedom is not a crime. It is the truest form of loyalty you can offer, loyalty to your own soul, to your own future, and to the life you were always meant to lead. Compassion without self-sacrifice. There is a misconception that compassion requires surrender, that empathy demands sacrifice, that love must come at the expense of your own peace. And yet, this could not be further from the truth. True compassion is not about losing yourself in the needs, fears, and insecurities of others. True compassion is about presence, awareness, and discernment. It is the quiet, profound understanding that while you can witness the pain and struggles of those around you, you are not obligated to absorb them into your own life, nor allow them to dictate your choices, your boundaries, or your well-being. Many of us have grown up believing that to love is to endure everything without complaint, that to care is to neglect ourselves, that the currency of affection is measured in exhaustion. But this is a myth, a narrative that silently robs us of our energy, our dignity, and our agency. Compassion, when practiced wisely, honors both the other and the self. It is a bridge, not a chain. Consider for a moment how easily the lines blur. When someone we love struggles, we instinctively want to help. It is human to reach out, to offer guidance, to shoulder their burdens, to soothe their fears. And yet, if we do this without limits, if we do this without boundaries, we risk sacrificing the very life we are trying to protect. Compassion without wisdom becomes enmeshment, a surrender that leaves the soul depleted and the heart heavy. You may find yourself saying yes when every fiber of your being whispers no, giving time, energy, and love that you cannot afford, and wondering why the weight of another's life feels heavier than your own. This is not weakness, it is a signal. It is the universe's quiet reminder that empathy, no matter how sincere, must be balanced with self-preservation. To care deeply and yet remain whole is not a contradiction, it is the highest form of love. Boundaries are not coldness. They are not cruelty. They are a declaration that your inner world has value, that your peace is sacred, that your presence is not a resource to be drained. By setting limits, you create space to act with true intention rather than out of compulsion or guilt. You begin to understand that helping someone effectively does not require surrendering your soul. In fact, your compassion is far more powerful when it is rooted in strength, in self-awareness, and in the deliberate choice to give without being consumed. This is a subtle, almost paradoxical truth. The stronger you are in your own life, the more deeply you can connect with and support others. The clearer you are about your own needs, the more effective and genuine your empathy becomes. Yet, walking this path is not easy. We are often met with resistance, from family, from society, from voices long embedded in our psyche that insist we must endure at any cost. These voices whisper that boundaries are selfish, that self-preservation is betrayal, that choosing peace over pain is cowardice, and so guilt seeps in like a slow poison, attempting to undermine the clarity you have fought so hard to achieve. But recognize this: guilt is a shadow of conditioning, not a reflection of reality. Choosing yourself does not diminish your love for others. It magnifies it by allowing it to exist without distortion. Compassion without self-sacrifice is an act of radical honesty. It is the conscious alignment of intention and action. It is the understanding that to love well, you must first be whole. When you practice this kind of compassion, something remarkable happens. You begin to navigate relationships not from fear or obligation, but from presence and authenticity. You can witness the struggles of others without losing yourself in them. You can offer support without resentment. You can care deeply without being drained. And in doing so, you model a new kind of love, a love that does not demand suffering to prove its sincerity, a love that honors the dignity of both giver and receiver. This is freedom, applied not only to your own life, but to your interactions with the world. It is the quiet, transformative power of acting from choice rather than compulsion, of connecting without surrendering, of loving without losing. And finally, understand this: practicing compassion without self-sacrifice is not a skill to be mastered once, but a lifelong commitment to presence, reflection, and courage. It requires vigilance, patience, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, about others, and about the boundaries that must exist to preserve the sanctity of your inner life. It requires that you repeatedly ask yourself, am I giving from love or from obligation? Am I honoring both their journey and mine? Am I sustaining my energy or exhausting it? And each time you answer with clarity, you reinforce a fundamental truth. Your life matters. Your peace matters. Your choices matter. Compassion does not demand the erasure of self. It flourishes only when the self is intact, respected, and free to act with intention. So, step forward into this paradox with courage. Learn to care without surrendering. Learn to witness without absorbing. Learn to love without losing yourself. For it is in this balance that true liberation resides, a liberation that allows you to be present, to act consciously, to live fully, and to extend your light to others without diminishing its brilliance. Compassion without self-sacrifice is not only possible, it is the cornerstone of a life lived with dignity, strength, and profound, unapologetic humanity. Breaking patterns, not hearts. Breaking patterns is not an act of aggression, and it is not an act of betrayal. It is, at its core, an act of courage, a quiet revolution that begins within the confines of your own mind and heart. Families are made of invisible tapestries, threads woven over decades, generations, sometimes centuries, each one carrying habits, beliefs, unspoken rules, and expectations that shape the way you think, feel, and respond. Some of these threads are beautiful, warm, and nurturing. Others are tangled with resentment, control, fear, and repetition of old pain. And as much as we love our families, as much as we cling to loyalty and tradition, we are not required to continue weaving the threads that hurt us. To break a pattern is not to sever the heart, it is to release the weight that has been quietly pressing down on your spirit, to stop participating in cycles that diminish your peace and hinder your growth. It is not rejection, it is evolution. It is the understanding that while you cannot change the past, you can change the future, beginning with yourself. The patterns we inherit are subtle, insidious, and persistent. Perhaps it is a tone of judgment that always surfaces during conversation. Perhaps it is a constant undermining of your confidence, a reminder that you are expected to conform, to obey, to be small so others can feel large. Perhaps it is an inherited silence, a way of avoiding emotion or discussion that leaves wounds unspoken but deep. These patterns become comfortable in their repetition. They feel familiar even when they hurt, and it is this familiarity that makes them so difficult to break. For decades, you may have believed that enduring, excusing, accommodating, or suppressing your own needs is proof of love. And yet, each act of endurance, each quiet suppression of the self, compounds the invisible weight of history, leaving your spirit exhausted, your soul diminished, and your freedom unrealized. Recognizing this is the first step. Understanding that you are allowed to intervene, to refuse, to act differently is the second. And then comes the most challenging step of all, acting. Acting requires clarity. It requires calm observation of the recurring cycles, without judgment or resentment, and a deliberate decision to respond differently. To break a pattern is not to lash out or to punish. It is to choose consciously, to interrupt the familiar rhythm that no longer serves you. It may mean setting firm boundaries, speaking your truth even when it is uncomfortable, or stepping away from situations that continuously compromise your dignity. And though it may feel like you are creating distance between yourself and those you love, you are not. You are creating space. Space for your growth, space for healthier connections, space for love that is conscious, reciprocal, and nourishing, rather than habitual or dependent on obligation. Breaking patterns is a gift, both to yourself and, in time, to those around you. For when you act differently, you provide a living example that cycles of pain do not have to define the next generation. You show that courage, integrity, and conscious choice can replace repetition, silence, and suffering. Yet, breaking patterns is not without its trials. There will be discomfort. There will be resistance. From family, from your own doubts, from the weight of decades of conditioning. You may feel guilt, as if every act of self-preservation is a betrayal, as if setting boundaries is an act of cruelty. But know this, breaking patterns is not cruelty. It is responsibility. Responsibility for your own emotional health, your own future, and your own legacy. By refusing to replicate harm, by refusing to participate in cycles that limit love and growth, you are making space for authenticity. You are honoring your experiences, your pain, and your capacity to rise above. And over time, the very people you feared might resent your choice may come to respect it, not because you have changed them, but because you have changed yourself. Perhaps the most profound truth of breaking patterns is this. Hearts do not break when boundaries are clear. They only break when cycles continue unchecked, leaving resentment, misunderstanding, and silent suffering to accumulate. To act consciously, to interrupt the habitual ways of responding, to choose clarity over complicity, is to preserve hearts, including your own. You are not destroying relationships, you are redefining them. You are not rejecting love. You are creating conditions where love can exist without hidden obligation or silent suffering. And in doing so, you step into a life where your choices are deliberate, your peace is protected, and your spirit is honored. So, embrace the courage to break patterns without shame or fear. Recognize that this act is a service not just to yourself, but to every thread of family that has inherited pain over generations. Know that liberation does not require destruction. It requires intention. Every choice to respond with awareness, every refusal to perpetuate cycles of harm is a quiet revolution, a transformation that reshapes not only your life, but the narrative of those who come after you. To break patterns without breaking hearts is to wield love with wisdom, to live with integrity, and to step fully into the freedom that has always been within your reach. In this deliberate, patient, compassionate act, you claim your life, and in claiming your life, you give others permission to claim theirs. Embracing your life without apology. To embrace your life without apology is to step fully into the truth of your existence, to claim every moment, every breath, every choice as irrevocably yours. For too long, many of us have lived with quiet restraint, measuring ourselves against the expectations, disappointments, and unspoken rules of those around us. We apologize for our desires, for our dreams, for the very essence of who we are, as if our presence were a disruption, a burden, or a mistake. And yet, there is a profound liberation in understanding that your life is not a courtesy extended to you by others. It is a gift, a responsibility, a singular journey entrusted to you and to no one else. To live without apology is not arrogance. It is clarity. It is courage. It is the conscious acknowledgement that your peace, your growth, and your joy are not negotiable. They are the birthright of every soul that dares to exist fully, without compromise, without fear, and without guilt. The weight of apology is subtle but relentless. It creeps into the language we use, the tone we adopt, the decisions we make. We say, "I'm sorry," for speaking our truth, for claiming space, for asserting boundaries. We apologize for leaving situations that harm us, for prioritizing our mental and emotional health, for embracing opportunities that others may not understand. This constant act of self-erasure becomes a habit, almost imperceptible in its repetition, until one day we awaken and realize that we have been living someone else's life in the quiet hope of approval, validation, or love. But here is the truth. Apology for simply being alive, for being human, for desiring freedom, is unnecessary. It is a shadow we carry only because we have been conditioned to do so. And the first step toward true liberation is to lay that shadow down, to recognize that your existence is enough, your choices are enough. Your life, unmediated by guilt or expectation, is enough. Living unapologetically does not mean you discard kindness, respect, or empathy. It does not mean you reject love or connection. On the contrary, it means that you engage with the world from a place of authenticity, not obligation, from a place of generosity, not fear, from a place of self-respect, not desperation. When you no longer apologize for being yourself, every interaction becomes conscious. Every relationship is entered into willingly, without the hidden tension of self-neglect or unspoken resentment. You begin to live as though your life is a sanctuary, and in doing so, you create a space where others can exist fully as well. To embrace your life without apology is to practice a form of radical honesty, an honesty with yourself, with your loved ones, and with the world that says, "I am here, I am alive, I will not diminish myself for anyone." There is also a subtle power in this act. When you claim your life unapologetically, you begin to radiate a quiet authority that is impossible to ignore. Others may feel discomfort, especially those who have grown accustomed to your quiet compliance, your self-imposed diminishment. They may test the boundaries, question your choices, or attempt to pull you back into patterns of guilt. And yet, your steadfastness, your refusal to apologize for your very existence, becomes a lesson in integrity. You demonstrate, without anger or confrontation, that life cannot be truly lived through fear or obligation, that joy cannot flourish beneath the weight of guilt, that peace cannot be cultivated when you continually surrender your soul to the expectations of others. Living without apology also requires forgiveness, especially of yourself. There may be years, perhaps decades of behavior where you did apologize for existing, where you deferred your happiness to satisfy others, where you silenced your voice in order to preserve a fragile harmony. These years cannot be erased, nor should they be a source of continued shame. Instead, they become the soil from which your new life grows, a testament to your resilience, a marker of the wisdom you have gained. By forgiving yourself, you acknowledge your past without letting it define your future. And in this forgiveness lies the most profound freedom of all, the freedom to step into your life fully, boldly, unapologetically, and without fear. Finally, embracing your life without apology is a commitment to joy, to purpose, and to the conscious creation of a legacy that belongs to you. It is the declaration that your existence is not contingent upon anyone's comfort, approval, or expectation. It is the acknowledgement that you are worthy of living fully, that your dreams deserve pursuit, that your soul deserves expression. And in embracing this truth, you offer a profound gift to the world, a life that is honest, radiant, and unshakably authentic. You become a living example that liberation is possible that peace is attainable, that joy is not a crime. You show that the only life worth living is the one claimed unapologetically, with courage, clarity, and unwavering love for oneself. So step forward, without hesitation, without guilt, without apology. Let every breath, every decision, every action be a declaration that your life belongs to you and no one else. Walk through the world fully present, fully alive, fully aware that to embrace your life without apology is to honor the deepest truth of your being. It is to live as you were always meant to live, free, whole and unrestrained by the shadows of expectation, fear or obligation. And in doing so, you illuminate a path not only for yourself, but for every soul who dares to follow, teaching by example that the greatest courage is not to conform, but to exist fully, unapologetically, and without compromise.